Hello and welcome back to another episode of Questionable Treatments. My wife, Kim.
And my husband, Ryan.
Kim is unsure of how to do intros for this, so I'm starting us off. This time I'm going to be learning, along with all of you, more about asylums, I believe.
Well, one in particular, Byberry.
Okay.
You ready?
As I'm going to be.
Okay. So, in order to get into the kind of like treatments and everything that happened at Byberry, we kind of have to understand how Byberry was created and why it was created.
Of course.
So the main reason it was created was to take overflow from Blockley.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about that. It also took overflow from a lot of other mental institutions, asylums and stuff for overcrowding, which made them overcrowded.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to primarily talk about Blockley, which is the reason why it was created.
And where are these located?
Pennsylvania.
And was the overflow just from the Pennsylvania area, or was it from...
Sometimes it was from other states because they specialized in incurable, if you can hear my air quotes, diseases.
Okay.
Which means they were transferred from a different hospital to be in this asylum to die.
Okay. Well...
Until it closed down in 1990.
For storage.
Yeah.
Reframe it as storage. It seems like that would be... Based on what we talked about last time, that's probably how they would put it.
Yeah.
How the states would prefer to refer to it.
Yeah. So I'm probably going to be reading primarily from my notes, which I'm not all that great at. But I do want this to be more of a conversation than it is me just reading stuff off.
Or me reading and being horrified.
Yeah. So let's start. Blockley was an asylum, but it started out as an almshouse.
Okay.
And in 1838, for the insane, the poor, the elderly, people who should have been in prison but weren't. In 1851, the name changed to Pennsylvania State Hospital. And then it added on the insane part to it to be a more specialized care. And the insane part was built because of the push from Dorothea Dix, which we learned about in the last episode.
Right.
And basically the buildings for the insane part followed the Kirkbride plan, which we also learned about.
Shallow V, 2 rows, low buildings.
Yep. The occupancy limit was 250 to 300 initially for the main building, but there was overcrowding. So in 1888, there was an addition that expanded the main building to 2 wings, with male patients housed in the north wing and female patients housed in the south wing.
Okay. Do we know what the makeup was? More female, more male?
Mixture of both, because...
But the sources don't call out being way more of one than the other?
Yeah. If we're talking like patients who actually needed to be there, more male.
Okay. Yeah, because last time you said a woman might just be committed because she's inconvenient for somebody.
Yeah. Yep. So then the total occupancy raised up to 500 because each wing held about 100 people. Between 1893 and 1913, smaller buildings were built to have a cottage feel instead of just one big building.
Okay.
A chapel was added, and it seemed like life on the inside wasn't terrible, but there was some complaints.
Yeah.
So a small little introduction into what Blockley was. It was an actual town that made up most of western Pennsylvania, but it's not there anymore.
How big?
Roughly 7,580 acres.
7,000 acres?
Approximately 11.8 square miles.
Holy moly.
On the west side of the Scully River.
I thought before when we talked about it.
No, that's not how you say that. Schuylkill River? However you say that. You thought what?
I thought you had said like 1,100 acres, not square miles.
1,100 for Byberry,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, still a town. Yes, it's a neighborhood for Philadelphia.
Okay. Is it just named that now?
Yeah.
As opposed to really having any relationship to...
No, the reason it was created was because of Byberry. They just got rid of all the buildings and built up
Right, it's
houses.
just still named that.
Yeah.
Like there are towns here that were annexed by other cities that are still called that colloquially.
Uh-huh.
But they're not officially that. They're not related to the original purpose, like factory towns and things like that.
Yeah. So the whole reason Byberry is still like a neighborhood of Philadelphia is it was created to be farmland on the outskirts of Philadelphia, like the city.
Okay.
And it was just named Byberry. Okay. So overcrowding wasn't all that great because in the 1890s, there was a push from the government, state government particularly, to put the elderly and poor from almshouses into asylums by redefining the term senility.
Senility.
Whatever. It became a psychiatric diagnosis, so the cost would be lowered for the state when taking care of almshouses.
Of course.
Yep.
Handy.
And then, main reason Byberry was created because there was a fire on February 12th of 1885 of the main building of Blockley for the insane department, and 21 patients were inside.
Mm.
The reason they were left inside is because nobody had a key to unlock them.
Okay.
Ain't that fun?
Yeah.
And then a bunch of patients were transferred to a bunch of different places. And then Byberry was created, and there was originally 2,000 patients from Blockley that needed to go there, but only a couple hundred in the beginning. So if you want to take a look at this map, that's when it was a farm and first being created.
Okay.
In the beginning, it had about 900 acres, and then it took some from a different county, and in the end, it was 1,100 acres, thereabouts.
Okay, yeah.
So the city of Philadelphia opened and operated the asylum starting in 1907 and wanted it to be a calming place for the inmates to get the help they needed. They followed guidelines from Kirkbride Moral Treatment Plan and built a campus on rural grounds of Philadelphia. It was a farm with 1,165 acres and few buildings to help with the overcrowding of Blockley. At first, there was around 250 patients spread around the farm. So the farm produced its own food, basically.
Yeah.
So it was like corn and lettuce and carrots, and it had dairy, and the cows would be for meat and stuff.
Yeah, we've seen stuff like this in a lot of the videos that we've seen on monasteries, convents, even factories and things like that. They would be pretty self-sufficient. They might have their own power. Actually, usually they seem to have their own power supply. Like we've seen smokestacks and stuff in some of these old places that aren't used anymore, but it was originally for power generation. I find that really interesting, just to have gone from this sort of model where a lot of these places were kind of self-sufficient in that they produced everything that they needed on site instead of buying it.
Yeah.
And now we just buy everything. I mean, I know there's like economies of scale and efficiency and stuff like that involved.
I'm sure a lot of regulations were put into place after a lot of this shit closed down.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they used to be self-sufficient too, but they didn't have hired help. They had patient help, which, yeah. So their dairy farm program continued until 1969. But once that closed down because there was no, like, people who knew how to milk cows.
Yeah.
To teach the patients how to do it. So they started having to trade grain that they farmed in order to get fresh milk.
Which is pretty funny for the 60s.
Yeah.
60s and 70s to be bartering goods.
Yeah. So funny you were talking about smokestacks. They actually had one. And it was in the center of, I believe, the mail. The mail area. And it was used to generate power.
Yeah.
So that way this can be self-sufficient.
Yeah, I was watching some stuff recently on like the history of technology and how it advances, and it talked a little bit about, you know, it would have been common for a lot of factories or facilities to have like a steam engine that would generate most of their power for whatever.
Yeah.
And when the electric grid became a thing, you know, some of them kind of struggled to figure out exactly how to implement that.
So when they started building, so it was later, it was a couple years later, around 1910, when they got the rest of the 1,400 patients from Blockley.
Mm-hmm.
And they needed
And that was all at once or just in a quick succession?
All at once.
Okay.
So they had to build new buildings. Mm-hmm. Well, the superintendent at that time...
And we've talked about only 2 buildings to this point?
right now in 1907 up to 1910, there was only like 2 buildings. Yeah.
Okay.
There was a bunch of buildings that were created, and I'll tell you about those. When they had to create these extra buildings for these 1,400 patients that were coming in. So the superintendent at the time, Dr. Joseph Neff, did a bunch of research on how to make this as good for the patients as possible. So clearly this started out with good intentions.
Yeah. Which we talked about before. Pretty much all these things would have started out with good intentions, including the treatments that eventually became literally the subject of like horror movies.
Yeah. So they had Neff's plan, which is, of course, what he named it, included 2 large buildings for the mentally incompetent female patients. So that would be someone living outside of the social norms for females, sex outside of marriage, not meeting the homemaking standards, hysterical, menopause, basically. 2 lower class resident buildings, 6 buildings for the residents in the upper class, and 6 buildings each for female and male mentally insane. And then they would later add on a bunch of buildings to try to make this a good thing on the book that I was reading, which is a good book if you're really interested in this stuff. The one I'm reading is Images of America by Byberry State Hospital by Hannah Karina Jones. They added a bunch of stuff to make this good for patients after it was taken over by the state. So they had a his and her shop. They had a shoe store. They had a music room. They had 2 libraries, one for males, one for females. And then they also had a medical library for doctors and nurses. They had a salon. They had a barbershop.
Again, gender differentiated.
Yeah, because you don't want them mixing.
Right.
Because they found out in 1980 when they had to downsize because they failed a bunch of
audits.
Yeah, audits, and they had to downsize a bunch. They had their males and female patients mixing, and there was a bunch of attendants who had to break up sex.
I thought you were gonna say they just found more people there than were supposed to be. Like the population became self-sustaining and self-replicating.
No. So, going back to when it first opened, there are accounts in the book of the attendants and the staff not being scared. They lived together. So the staff and the inmates lived together, and they weren't scared at all of these patients because they were competent patients.
Sure, yeah.
So they could do the work and stuff, and they were mostly mentally sound.
Yeah.
So they weren't scared at all. But once they started getting in these 1,400 patients, they brought staff from Blockley as well. And now you're getting into the violent patients, the criminally insane, all that kind of stuff. And
so would some of these patients have been like today? You see people who are basically sentenced to time in a mental institution for some kind of violent crime?
Yes, but it was worse.
Okay.
Now you have to prove by multiple interviews by a psychiatrist to be found mentally incompetent.
Okay. But back then it'd be like, oh, this person's... Well, their lawyer says there's something wrong with them, or the jury thinks there's something wrong with them, so we'll just send them to this place with people who...
They would send mentally sound people to insane asylums because they didn't want to be criticized for not doing it. So if you had an argument that they were mentally insane or criminally insane, they would automatically send you to an insane asylum in the 1900s.
Okay.
So there was around 2 attendants when this first opened as the farm. And then when they got the rest of the inmates that they were supposed to get from Blockley, the size occupancy that it's supposed to have was 2,100, but they had 2,267 by 1914.
Yeah.
So basically, it was a catch-all for overcrowding at public and private institutions.
Yeah. Sounds like a state-run thing.
Yeah.
I know around here I've heard, like, the state will fund building a high school, but only for the number of students it has at that time as opposed to what they project it will have, at some point in the future. So they're, like, future-proofing.
Yeah.
So that's why especially around here, there's so many schools with similar names or the old high school name like etched in the stone somewhere because it was built 100 years ago, and then 50 years later they need another one, and then another 20 years after that another one. And
technically where we live, we have what, 6 high schools?
something like that. Yeah, they're just all hand-me-down elementary schools.
Yeah.
We're in a suburb of St. Louis. We haven't said before, but we're in a suburb of St. Louis, and it's, I don't know, it's probably the same everywhere or similar everywhere, but
okay. So in the 1920s, photographer Mac Parker with the Philadelphia Record snuck into the hospital and took pictures of the state of the patients.
Yeah, it's like a huge campus. That would probably actually not be the most challenging thing in the world to sneak in.
Nope. As you can see, male patients were typically naked.
Yeah. Yeah, so since this is audio, we'll try to find a way to link to some of this maybe in the show notes, but yeah, it's very overcrowded, lots of male patients, a lot of whom are in varied states of undress. People appear to be eating without utensils, kind of just with their fingers or drinking from bowls.
So there was not
There's
enough.
Is this a kitchen or a laundry that I'm looking at?
That's a kitchen.
Okay.
So in that picture, what it's showing is soup.
Yeah, these like
basins,
big iron vat looking things.
Yeah. And if you see the ceiling, it's rotting, and it would drop into the soup that they were served.
Yeah. So a little
spice.
A little asbestos to spice up your soup.
Yeah, a little spice. So he snuck in, he took these pictures, he published them in the newspaper, and it got a big outcry of the public.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, this is not okay. So the state took over. And the first superintendent that the state appointed actually tried. He tried. He built a bunch of buildings.
Yeah.
That's when all of the activities that were put in, you know, bowling alley, there was a bunch of sports clubs that were put in.
Yeah.
And all of this stuff, but it didn't help.
But the first guy was trying to.
Trying to. But you can't, if you're overcrowded and understaffed, which is something they seem to have not learned.
Yeah.
So basically,
it's good to see that strategy was around back then.
Yeah.
Fire the head person, replace them, don't fix anything.
Yeah.
Any of the underlying issues, don't change the way it works, don't change the funding.
The only one that I can think of right now would be Boeing.
Yeah.
Is following this plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a couple companies that have been through a lot of CEOs, and some countries have been through a lot of like presidents and prime ministers, especially the UK over the last few years.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, there's only so much the person at the very top can do.
Yeah, especially if they don't have control.
Right.
So I'm going to go into a little bit about the overcrowding and what it was like. In the 1940s, there was reported to be around 4,500 patients, with the limit at 2,500.
Okay.
So 2,000 more patients than there should be.
Yeah.
In 1950s, reported to be 5,560, with the same limit of 2,500. And that was through the 1960s. In 1970, it was reported to be around 7,000 patients. With
replacement
the same.
Have 2,100 max.
25.
2,500 max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then when they had their audit in the 1980s, they're like, the patients got to go. So they were down to 900.
Well, that's better.
But that's bad for all the other asylums.
Like 50 years, they were living like they were on a ship.
Yeah.
Although on a ship would have been better, because the ship would have had beds or bunks. I'm doubting that they added all these people while like adding beds and, you know, appropriate accommodations and all that kind of thing.
The top picture was in before the state took over. The bottom picture was when the state took over, like after. It's just rows and rows and rows of beds, right bumped up next to each other.
Yeah.
There's no space in between them.
If you were to imagine a scene where there's refugees or something from a major natural disaster where they have cots and all that in a gymnasium or something, that's absolutely what that looks like. Just, how would you even get to some of these beds? You'd have to like walk over people.
You'd have to crawl over people, yeah. Yeah, it's... So then the staffing crisis, when you have 7,000 patients, there was one attendant to 144 patients. in the 1940s to 400 patients in the 1970s.
Mhm.
One attendant to this many people.
Yeah. And we did the math on that before that would mean if you worked an 8-hour day, you can spend, was it like
I think it was like
1.2 minutes
I
with
think
each
so.
person?
Yeah, it was bad.
Basically enough time to say, hey, how you doing? Everything good?
Yeah.
Oh no, it's horrific here? Okay.
There's more naked patients.
Same thing as everybody else.
So the reason there was naked patients is because laundry was left up to the inmates.
Mm-hmm.
And the inmates didn't know how to work the laundry equipment, and the laundry equipment was typically broken. So a lot of the clothes and a lot of the bedding, so blankets and sheets and pillows and pillowcases and stuff, were ruined.
Yeah.
So patients would have to be naked, typically male patients. Now they can't go outside because they're naked. So they got their stuff taken away, all their activities taken away by no fault of their own.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times they had broken windows. So they're in Pennsylvania. It gets cold and it gets really hot, and they have no way to
shelter from that.
Nope, no way. So it was bad. So the other thing I kind of want to go into, I'm a little out of order on this, is the treatment of patients. So it's fucked up. For the criminal ward, there's accounts of nurses who would run in, drop off food, and run out and lock the door because they were so scared of being in there. These are mentally competent people, most of them were, who just murdered somebody, typically, who's in here to be away from prison. Joke's on you, it's worse.
Yeah, I was about to say, I bet a lot of them regretted that decision. They thought they were getting away with something.
Yeah. They would have no time out, meaning time out of the ward.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were locked in their cells the whole time. There was nothing for them to do except for sit and stare out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Like, inmates now have better treatment than they did then.
Prison inmates, you mean?
Prison inmates, yes, have better treatment now than they did then. So patients would be restrained before 1955 with leather straps, handcuffs, bed sheets. Bed sheets were tied to them around the neck, around the midriff, around the wrist and ankles, tying them straight to the bed.
That's horrific.
Yeah.
To use bed sheets to do that, but especially, I don't know, when they already don't have enough and they're dedicating some of the few resources they have to just tying people up.
Yeah.
To stop them from being a problem. I mean, that would be newsworthy if they found just like a babysitter doing that, or if they found anybody doing that in a hospital. If somebody went into a hospital, like walked by a window and saw through one of those little slits,
and there's no
somebody
order.
Tied up.
There's no medical order for it.
But in this case, it's just, I can't deal with you because I have 8 hours and I have 399 more
hours,
people to see.
And
if you get 16 hours a day, then you have, 2.5 minutes for each inmate.
Yeah.
I don't want that feels wrong to use that word.
I'm so used to saying patients that I'm probably going to go back and forth this whole time when we're talking about this.
Well, patients is what they
should be called.
Yeah.
But they were called inmates. Yeah. So if you were found competent, you were typically working on something.
Not let go.
No.
If they determine like, oh, you're mentally sound, good, you can do work. Not you can go out into society and have a job and a life.
Typically for every 1,000 patients up until they were forced to go down to 900 patients, for every 1,000 patients, there was 2 that were released as cured. And there was about 40 to 50 released as better.
Like good enough.
Good enough. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a term that we talked about before for it, but
yeah,
functional.
So there's actually an article in here. So something we're going to go in later is people who didn't want to go to war for World War II, and it would be based on religious beliefs.
Okay.
So a lot of times those male people who didn't want to go to World War II and serve, most of them were for religious beliefs that they didn't believe in killing another person.
Yeah.
Some of them just really didn't want to do it. So they were put into asylums to work without pay. Whereas females...
Would that have been to benefit the war in any way? Was it
No.
like a draft, or was it basically
No.
just a
You're not going to war,
coercion
so
method?
you're going to do this.
Okay.
It was trying to
dissuade draft dodgers.
Discourage, yeah. So, this page. So, in here, it says the brutality included beatings. So, this is from people who were not there because they didn't want to go to war. This is attendants who were working there. This was their job. The brutality included beatings with clubs and lengths of hose filled with buckshot. These abuse occurred in part due to lack of proper training, and some attendants depended on brutality to control patients and maintain order on the wards. It was also due to the fact that some attendants, according to Albert Dutch's The Shame of the States, were vagrant, recruited directly from courts and police stations, where they were reportedly given the choice of jail sentence or going on the Byberry payroll.
So vagrant being just somebody without anything else to do.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who's just around.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then it continued.
That's so strange.
Yeah.
That could potentially be, like, we know somebody who owns a diner right near a courthouse, right? And she's told us about, like, certain days they let people out.
Yep.
There's like a county lockup nearby, and they let people out, and they go to this diner, and for like a certain period of time during certain days of the week, there's just people wandering around who don't know what to do or where to go.
Yeah, because you're in a completely different city.
Yeah, so now there's somebody there to be like, hey, what are you doing? I just got out of jail. Bad news for you, buddy.
Yeah. You can either go to jail or you can work.
Yeah, you can go back or you can go do something way worse.
Yeah, and this is because they couldn't get staff.
Yeah, anybody who had another option wouldn't want to do it.
But it continues, offended by the violence, conscientious? Yeah, why can't I say it?
I don't know.
Objectors, so these people who didn't want to go to war,
right,
instead depended upon peaceful options, talking down agitated patients, treating patients with respect, and using restraints.
Ah.
So this is where restraints mainly came in.
A rubber hose full of buckshot.
Mm-hmm.
So they had money for buckshot and hose, but not...
Well, they had to kill a cow somehow.
Clothing. Would they use buckshot for that?
Yeah, they would have shot the cow.
Yeah, but they use a bolt gun.
Now they use a bolt gun.
Then. Okay.
Okay. So these patients were typically restrained to beds or chairs for days on end, could go up to years until they died or were discharged. Many of the patients that have been restrained were not the patients that did farm or maintenance work because they're incompetent. They're the ones who were supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Not the ones who were put there because they were poor or a woman.
Oh. Yeah. Hysterical.
Yeah.
Or didn't do the dishes or didn't do the laundry.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like, I'm sick of you. So after 1955, drugs came about. And that's what really when all the procedures that we talked about in the last episode stopped, at least at Byberry.
So electroshock, insulin shock.
Yep. Convulsion therapy. They still used electroshock as a punishment.
Okay.
And they still used basically waterboarding as a punishment.
Yeah.
It was called hydrotherapy, which is a nicer term for waterboarding. That's basically where you're in a tank of either cold or hot water for hours to days.
Well, that's not waterboarding technically.
Waterboarding is where you get dripped on the forehead or put water over your face or something.
The drip on the drip on the forehead is Chinese water torture. The waterboarding is like the cloth over the face, and I think you have them at an incline.
Yeah, but
apparently they've been doing that for a long time. I thought that was like that came out with the Guantanamo stuff a couple years ago, and I thought that was a modern thing. There was an episode of Lie to Me, I think, where they did it.
Yeah.
There's some spy movie with Denzel. They used that on him. And it looks horrific. And then today, for research for something else I was working on, I found that back in the 1600s, they were using it, like the Dutch East India Trading Company was using it back then. They called it something else, but it was basically the same thing.
If they were using it as punishment, they would push you under the water. And then you'd come back up and stay in the tub for a while. So they try to drown you, and then you'd be up in this freezing cold water or this super hot water.
Yeah.
But they would also do it with sheets, and that's one of the ways that they would restrain you. Is how you do the burrito and tuck you in, typically for like kids and stuff?
Yeah.
They'd have wet sheets and do that with freezing cold water. And sometimes there would be like air movement in the room to keep it cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically,
a lot of people died because of it.
Making you into a swamp cooler.
A lot of patients would go into hypothermia because of it. It was bad. But once the drugs came around, they started doing...
And that was all... You're saying that was all punishment?
It was thought of as treatment in the beginning. You're shocking the system. Because everything has to be a shock in the early 1900s.
To set everything right again.
Yep.
Kind of like you do diets today where it's like, don't eat for a couple days.
Yeah, you're
not
shocking
medical
the system.
advice, but yeah, that's... I mean, and I've done it before, like, don't eat for a day or two and then eat cheese or whatever and see how it makes you feel. It's supposed to like kind of reset your system.
Yeah, and it also forces your body to burn fat instead of the food that you're eating.
But still,
not medical advice.
Similar idea. Like, we love the idea of resetting.
Yeah.
Turning it off and on again is
Yep.
the doctor's ultimate dream.
There's this video that I watched about this guy who got, I don't remember the medical term for it, but basically you stop the heart and you restart it within a second. And he's like, there had to be a cardiologist somewhere that goes, have you tried turning it off and back on again?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the IT crowd. But instead of calling just Roy for computer help, they're calling the doctor. Like, okay, this patient's doing this. Well, have you tried turning him off and on again?
So instead of physical restraints, cubicle beds, leather straps, handcuffs, cold wet towels, it turned into drugs. So either energizing them or suppressing them.
Yeah.
And most of the time, it was the attendants giving it, who should not be giving it because they have no medical training.
Right. 2 months ago, they were a vagrant in front of a courthouse.
Yeah. And now they're giving drugs to these patients to restrain them. And a lot of times they OD'd a bunch of them because the doctors were too busy with 7,000 people.
Right.
And would just sign off.
Right.
They wouldn't even look at it. That was bad. So they also had solitary confinement for the ones who caused fights. So not only were you getting beatings from attendants, you were getting beatings from your fellow people.
Right. You're the other inmates.
Yeah. And there's an account from an article that I read where this inmate was choking this other inmate up against a wall. And it was this reporter or an auditor, I think it was a reporter, walking with the attendant when they noticed it. And the attendant was trying to get him off. And the way he did it was kicking him, hitting him upside the head, kicking him in the ribs. When he finally went down, kicked him in the groin, drug him by his hair and threw him in a closet and locked it. And the reporter was like, the fuck? And he's like, well, that guy should have been dead a long time ago.
And the guy threw in the closet.
Yeah. Fucked up.
Yeah.
It's fucked up. So they would have been put into solitary confinement where they would have been chained to a wall in a dungeon, which is the darkest part of the basement of whether the female ward or the male ward or the criminally insane ward, whatever ward you're in.
That is the basement of that building.
Yep. And most of the time they were forgotten about. So now we go on to the food. As we talked about earlier, most of it was contaminated by wall parts and ceiling parts.
Yeah, that ceiling was not good.
Yeah.
That looked like
an abandoned building.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there were regulations in place about how to treat these people, but it wasn't until the audit of 1980 when the governor of Pennsylvania came in. They would just do like reports from the facility.
Meaning the facility was sort of grading themselves?
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, like this is what's going to happen. And they created
like
fancy menus.
Yeah, like what would you call it? Like an employee, like a performance evaluation and a performance improvement
plan.
Yeah. To be like, I will do this and I'll do that, and here's what I think is my weakness, and here's what's my strength, and then your boss probably just signs off because they don't
Yeah.
care or they don't watch what you do because you're an adult and it's not their job to watch over your shoulder all day.
Yeah.
But
And
in this case, it is the auditor's job to watch over their shoulder.
yeah, and they didn't do it. But basically, the superintendent cared. Most of them cared, and they wanted more help. But they weren't getting it from the state. They weren't getting funding. So basically, before the governor came in, there was another audit earlier where they came into a couple of the buildings and they're like, this is not good living for these patients. No patients can be in this facility, in this building. So they would have to move them into a different building. And
which is also
not helping the situation.
The overcrowding.
Yeah. And so the superintendent at the time basically was like, how are we supposed to fix it if you can't give us money? Well, they were going to completely tear down and rebuild the buildings, which is what they were promised by the government. And the government, after 2 years of like pushing it off, was like, yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So here again, we see the trend of them wanting to help and it not being available. But we go into the food. When it was not necessarily watched over like it should have been, there was these fancy menus that the staff would create. And for example, on, let's say, a Wednesday in the morning, they're supposed to have scrambled eggs, cornmeal, like bacon and coffee. They would get cornmeal and coffee.
Yeah.
For lunch, they're supposed to have like Jello, sandwich, and like juice. And they got Jello and juice, which is neither one of those are nutritious. And then for dinner, they're supposed to get like a burger, beans, and mashed potatoes. And they got bean soup.
It's bad. It explains how some of those patients looked in the pictures you showed me.
Yeah, they're emaciated.
They all look like Winston in the movie for 1984, like based off the book. Because he's super, super skinny in that. I mean, that actor's just super skinny, but...
Yeah. But think, what movie was it where Christian Bale was emaciated?
Machinist.
That.
I think that was the movie. Yeah, he lost all that weight. He said he what did he smoked cigarettes. He ate like an apple a day and a can of tuna a day to get down to that weight.
Yeah, basically what these patients were eating every single day. And supposed to work.
Yeah.
It's
really hard bad. To, I don't know. The state should be able to take care of people. Like, the state should be able to help people.
State doesn't give a shit.
I mean, I think a lot of people in the state do. I think the process is getting in the way. Like, there was that bridge that collapsed a couple of years ago. I forget where. Like, some major bridge has, like, millions of cars that go over it every year or every month or something like that. And it was something, I don't know if it was the Trump administration that did it or the Biden administration. It was either, like, late Biden, early Trump. I don't know if it was them or something with the governor, but basically there was this plan of like, we're not going to do all of this stuff we usually do. We're not going to do these impact studies and, you know, because it would have taken years to rebuild it when they just built it the way they used to do.
Yeah.
And there are good reasons to do impact studies and all that, but they're like, this bridge has already been here. It's super important. There are now people living on like each side of it who can't get to or from work or whatever. They had it rebuilt within like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But what I was trying to look up over here on my laptop while you're reading some of that was there was a rail line in the UK. It's like 11 miles or something of rail that they were trying to reopen. And, you know, if I'd known where the conversation was going to go, I'd be prepared. But I just remember them talking about like the paperwork it generated was however many times longer. If you laid out the paper on the ground, it was like 20 times longer than the actual rail line, like all these studies and whatever, all this government bureaucracy on like, can we reuse this line? Should we reuse this line? Like, is it okay to just like let a train go back down this track that's been shut down for some period of time?
Yeah.
It's just, it boggles the mind to...
It's the same way I feel about with
think
like
of all these processes. And I'm sure that, you know, it's one of those things where the state authorized a spending package specifically for the buildings. but not for anything else. And there's no like provision for increasing the spending to allow for more staff or whatever.
Oh, there was a budget. They just said not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no provision for that to go up
Yeah.
based on the number of
Well, there
inmates.
was
Like that's how it should be structured in theory would be for every, well, I mean, it should just be for every person, the state provides X amount in funding.
Well, the funding for Byberry was like $2 million per year for them to do what they need to do with it. And a lot of times the government was like, yeah, you're not getting that this year.
Oh, I just wouldn't do it.
They just wouldn't do it.
Well, we've heard of states not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's bad. It's the same way I feel about with the police. There's too much fucking paperwork. Like if there's an active, I've talked to you about this before. If there's an active shooter in our home, I do not believe the police would be able to save me because there's too much fucking paperwork.
Yeah, and rules.
And
what
rules.
they're supposed to do or not.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you see like It's a Wonderful Life, which was from, I don't know, the 40s or 50s or whatever. George is running down the street because he's trying to figure out what's going on, and everybody he knows doesn't know him, and they're in different situations in their life. And he runs down the street, and a cop, crowded, main street or town square area, pulls out his revolver and starts shooting.
Yeah.
Or in like the Dirty Harry movies. I know those are not, nothing I'm talking about is known to be, these are not documentaries. They're not super realistic.
Yeah.
But it was common in movies to see, shootouts.
Yeah.
And I feel like they've done a lot to control that, but they probably also made it to the point where
the cop's not safe anymore.
And there's so much, I don't know. I guess you're going to get to like, it ties their hands.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. Staying on with the police, they have to prove that they did XYZ before they pulled out their gun and shot somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not going to go through XYZ to get there, there has to be imminent danger to a civilian or to themselves. So,
yeah,
it's government gets in the way of everything.
Yeah, there's a balance somewhere, and we tend to miss it.
Yep. So again, with the budget and them not getting the money for it, a lot of the inmates were forced to eat like animals because they didn't have enough to buy silverware.
Yeah.
Plastic or metal.
Yeah, I saw no silverware in those photos.
Yeah. And a lot of times patients would keep their spoon that they got just so that way they can have a utensil to eat with. And a lot of times they were sharing it with other people. You know how disgusting that is? I'd rather eat with my hands
than share with like 10 people.
Yeah, than share it with 10 people. If a patient did not listen, they were beat with either fist or hands or with a weapon of creation.
Yeah, an improvised weapon.
Yeah. There was an account of a man sitting on a bench talking with an attendant, so like a reporter talking with an attendant when they came in for like a mass audit. And the patient did not get up from the bench when a working patient came in, or a working inmate, as I recalled, was sweeping the porch, and the attendant was yelling at the patient to get up. So the attendant just went over there, got a leather strap that he just had in his back pocket, how convenient, and started beating the patient. And it wasn't until about 5 minutes later that he realized the patient is strapped to the fucking bench. Like, it's just awful. And these were...
Yeah, that one makes my skin crawl.
It's just, how can you employ these people who treat patients this way? Like, there's no background check at all. All you have to do is a simple call to the police department. Hey, has this guy ever been picked up? And what for? Nothing. These people wouldn't be able to get a job anywhere else, and yet they were allowed to work at a place where you're supposed to be taking care of other people.
Yeah.
And then if you get into the living conditions, typically in these places, you would have poop all over the fucking floor and all over the walls.
The way you said that. Somebody's going to clip that and make like a text tone out of it.
I hope. I'd be so happy.
It sounds like reading a Cards Against Humanity card.
Without reading anything on this page, what do you think that is?
That looks like a concrete floor with a drain, and people have been going to the bathroom there.
Nope, it's backed up sewage.
Oh, Even worse.
It's backed up
So
sewage.
sewage coming up through the pipe, not people being trapped in a room and having to resort to
Using it.
using the pipe as a bathroom.
And then there is another one, this page. More naked men. Can you read what's on that wall?
For use by diarrhea. Yeah, it's diarrhea patients only?
Yep.
Huh.
So you're sick to your stomach and you're having to shit next, real close to another person.
Yeah.
With no privacy.
Having a diarrhea off.
Yeah, it is.
Well, at least they were prepared for that emergency.
Yeah.
I mean, there are situations that even they...
Just a fucking patient chilling up there.
Yeah, chilling on the wall. I noticed, like a cat.
Yeah. You want to know how bad that this got with the poop and the sewage?
No. I haven't really wanted to know anything we've talked about.
Well, you're going to find out. I have it marked. These are the buildings that are supposed to be shut down and tore down. That highlighted section, go ahead and read that.
Uh-oh. However, before they were torn down, they were temporarily used by local police departments for drug dog training and practice drills. The potent hospital odor that was so memorable to employees and remarked upon throughout the years was considered a good way to mask drug smells and thus an excellent test for the dogs. So, even shut down and empty, the building stunk so bad
that they trained police dogs to smell drugs.
Yeah. If you can smell through this, you can smell through anything.
And you know, the part that I think is the most fucked up about that? You had police in these buildings. Someone who is supposed to protect you, who is trained to protect you, and they did shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I find most fucked up about it. There would be patients...
It's difficult for me to highlight one thing that is worst out of all this.
Yeah, I think that's it. Not even the abuse of the patients, not even... all of that. It's police were in there and did nothing.
Well, that's the first time you talked about that. There were like...
That's the first time I found it.
Resource officers, basically? Like, isn't that what they call them when they're in a school or a hospital or whatever? A resource officer?
Yeah. And they did nothing. You have families who would remark that they didn't want to come see their family members because they didn't like the way the patients acted. Mm. They didn't like the odor.
Yeah, it's a self...
And they didn't like the screams that were coming from, because some mentally ill patients now and then would just randomly scream. But a lot of times they were being abused.
Well, or they had Tourette's.
A lot of times because they were being abused.
Yeah, but I mean, there were so many things that they didn't understand and would not have been like aware of, sensitive to, whatever the term we want to use is. But it's like, ugh. I mean, that's why they're in there. Like, oh, this person yells sometimes.
Yeah.
Put them in there.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with them.
But you have these police around this awful odor on a still active insane asylum, hearing these patients screaming, and they didn't think to investigate it. And they just believed, this is what they do.
Yeah.
That is what breaks my heart the most.
And the whole thing's
awful.
Horrific.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the staff.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a failure of state budgeting and staffing.
Yeah. The state is supposed to protect these people, and they didn't, and they failed. And there's people who tried their hardest to protect these people, and they couldn't because they were so overwhelmed and so understaffed.
Did you see anything about, like, staff on staff violence?
No, I didn't read anything about that, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was.
Because I would assume there'd be conflict between the staff members who, like the guy beating the dude tied to a bench.
Yeah.
And somebody else who'd be trying to stop them. I mean, maybe that's part of what made the whole thing so inefficient. Because you have a certain group, I don't know how to put them, some subset that are actively harmful. And then the ones who are trying to help are not only trying to control the patients, but trying to control the other attendants to stop them from doing whatever they're doing and make sure the doctors actually get the right information.
Yeah.
So are we going to get into how big the staffs were? Because we talked about...
Okay. So overcrowding was directly linked to understaffing. At the time, the American Psychiatric Association standards required 1,100 attendants, 200 nurses, and 34 physicians for a patient population of Byberry size. But there was only 180 attendants, 41 nurses, and 14 physicians on payroll.
So more than we thought.
Yeah.
But rotating staff, attrition, all that.
Yep. But
Was it the Stanford prison experiment that I keep thinking of where they found, yeah, they were supposed to do like a 2-week study in the 70s to see how people would react. They assigned students as guards and guards and inmates, prisoners, because it's supposed to be a prison setting, not a mental facility setting. And they found that they became extremely cruel.
Yep. Typically, there is a picture of the staff rooms. But basically, you saw how the beds were.
Yeah.
That's basically how they were for the staff.
So, like a gym full of cots.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, even in the Grand Budapest Hotel, Zero, as like an attendant, had a little broom closet sized room of his own.
Yeah. But you have multiple beds in that area for it. Why can't I find this fucking picture? I will find this picture. I want to see what a fire escape looked like.
A slide?
A fucking slide so they can push patients out if there's a fire. So this is housing for all the staff.
Okay.
This is housing for the physicians.
Okay. So the physicians get basically like frat house type building, and the regular staff are 2 to a room or several to a room. They get like a nightstand in between them, some personal effects, pictures, things like that.
Yeah, and that's it. There was no housing for couples. There was no housing for families.
Oh, that could be a big part of why they had trouble getting people then.
That's the reason they had issues.
Yeah.
Like the top pay based on the book for a worker was $66 a month. Average was about $55.
Average was $55?
Yeah.
And we did the conversion. That's like $1,200-ish today.
Yeah, a month.
Yeah. That's
not enough to live on.
Well, yeah.
If you're married, it's easier, but not by yourself.
Well, but if you're not paying for your living expenses, maybe that's part of the way they justified it, or maybe that's them stretching their budget as much as they possibly can.
Yeah. So if we're going to get into the staff, which is what I want to do now. So the biggest part of the biggest part of staff were the worker patients, the worker inmates. And the only recognition they got was a bag of foul tobacco.
Foul tobacco?
Foul tobacco.
Is that how the book says it?
Yep. Foul tobacco.
Anything to smoke it with?
Nope.
Or do they chew it?
Just the tobacco.
Yours. Figure it out.
Yep. Just for you. So that's all they got. And of course, I'd be pissed off too. And, you know, you're overworked, you're underpaid, you're underappreciated. You're using the patients as workers because you don't have enough staff.
Maybe I could barter some foul tobacco for a turn with the communal spoon.
Probably how they did it. So let's get into procedures.
Oh, goody. I didn't like that look on your face.
So a lot of the procedures that they had were used as punishments, not to help people. And it wasn't the superintendent or anybody who was of the office type staff. It was the people who you should be trusting with your life. The attendants, the nurses, the physicians. So there would be one dentist before they got an actual dentist office in there. There would be one dentist that would come once a week, and all they had was a large bit drill with nothing to fill it with. So if you had a cavity,
they just drill it out.
But you wouldn't have anything to pack it with, so now you have an exposed nerve.
Yeah.
Which is super painful.
Yeah.
And they didn't believe schizophrenics had pain receptors. So there was no Novocaine. There was no general anesthesia. She just had to grin and bear it. Yeah. So if you bit somebody, all your teeth are gone. They'd rip all your teeth out.
Holy.
Yeah. I got my wisdom teeth removed. I don't know how I would be able to handle that. When I get my filling redone, I've had to do it a couple times because it just wears away because I clench my teeth. It's so close to the nerve that even with numbing, it's unbearable. Now living with that, with a hole in your tooth with no medication. They would do procedures, surgeries, stitches, set broken bones with no anesthetic at all because they believed schizophrenics could not feel pain. I don't know if that was a true belief or if they just said that.
Justified it to themselves that way. Like,
Yeah.
They probably don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And they say schizophrenic, but they did that to the whole patient population.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, and then any procedure that they would do without any sort of numbing or anything. The only reason they got any medication for any of the shock therapies that they got is because the convulsions were so violent they would break bones. That's the only medication they would get. They didn't want to deal with broken bones. That's the only thing that they did at Byberry that I could find that was a procedure that was bad enough. The procedures that they would do, like electroshock, convulsion therapy, insulin, would be for the ones who weren't working on the farm, unless you were being punished. So if I was back then, I'd pick prison.
Yeah, no kidding. But you wouldn't have known.
No, it was pretty apparent because there was every decade there was a news article on how bad it was, and these idiots still try to claim insane.
Yeah.
You're so stupid. I'd pick prison over this shit.
Yeah.
So the other fucked up thing that happened, there was 2 experiments that happened at Byberry. One was involuntary. The other one was voluntary. So I'm going to leave the worst one for last. So they were doing an experiment on hepatitis A and B, I believe, and syphilis.
Okay.
And the workers, like the nurses and attendants and stuff, would volunteer for the study. So you were injected with a live hepatitis B, A, and I think C, potentially, can't remember, and syphilis. So one would be hepatitis A, one would be hepatitis B, one would be hepatitis C, and another one would be syphilis, just to kind of see how the symptoms would progress. The patients would also volunteer because of a bet that was taken with another patient to prove that they're not cowardly or to get away from Byberry.
Oh, hoping they get so sick they have to be sent away.
They would be stuck in the facility that they were at for the experiment.
Not conducted on site. Okay.
Yep. So
Wow.
it's so bad.
So bad you will volunteer to go and be a guinea pig to have a disease.
To have a disease that's going to kill you.
Yeah, isn't syphilis the one that kind of you rot away?
Yeah, it makes you insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kills your brain before it kills the rest of your body. So that's basically that. The other one.
And that wasn't the bad one.
That wasn't the bad one.
Jeez.
Involuntarily used patients is a common drug company that's still around today under a different name. The drug company is Smith, Kline, and French. It's a different drug company now. Basically, they were trying to find better pain medicines, better stimulants, antidepressants, psychotic medications, and the patients were their guinea pigs, not knowingly.
Yeah.
A lot of them OD'd and died.
Okay. I was going to ask, how does taking an antipsychotic at a mental institution come out worse? But
or they
so
didn't.
They're just dumping into the vats of food?
They'd be like, here's your medication.
Oh, just
Here.
Routine. They're like, what's this pill?
Yeah.
Or
just
they probably
giving
don't
it to
ask because they're going to get electroshocked or
beaten
cold water or whatever.
Yeah. Or get all their teeth removed. Like, no wonder people fear the dentist so much now.
But was this treatment, is this specific to this facility?
This is specific to this facility.
So this is a real bad facility, but they're not all like this.
Yes. A lot. So the daily living, if it was a state run.
What was a bad outlier situation in another one would be sort of daily life here?
Oh, most state-run facility had some sort of experiment going on. Most of them. One was eugenics.
Yeah.
I'm going to dye your eyeball, see if your kid comes out with a dyed eyeball too.
Cool.
Yeah. Without pain medicine, by the way.
It's like an even darker, I keep coming up pop culture references. It's like an even darker version of like the vaults in Fallout, where you find out in Fallout 3, maybe, that each of the vaults was designed for an experiment. Like, it's partially to survive and partially like, we're going to mess with this group of people in this way over however many decades or centuries they're going to be in this vault. And some of them were like eugenics.
Yeah. So Sometimes with this experiment, they would get the drug wrong, like the composition wrong, and it would cause the patients either to get such high fevers they die, they would OD, they would get severely sick, or they would just waste away. A lot of psychotic drugs now decrease appetite.
Oh, so they'd just be kind of listless and not eat.
The suppressants were so strong that they would just not do anything.
Mm.
They wouldn't get up. They wouldn't go to the bathroom. They wouldn't do anything.
And the staff are probably like, "Oh, this is great.
Yeah, I love this
They're
drug.
really
Can I get some more of it,
compliant." Like,
please?
they just chill.
Yeah.
Like the guy up on the wall over the
Diarrhea
only
toilet.
toilets that
Yeah.
that photo you just showed me.
Yeah. And a lot of the patients who were restrained were forced to lay in their own feces. And they were told by the head attendant to just clean the area around them, but leave them in their shit.
Hmm.
So they would get wounds from it that would get infected. And there's no doctor to take care of them. Yeah. It was very bad. It closed down in 1990. So almost a century of this shit. And it continued being just as bad.
I mean, was there ever anybody that said that there was anything good happening there? Like that 2 people a year or 2 people out of 1,000 that got released as cured, where they're like, "Oh, it helped me," or would if they said that, was it because they were afraid of going back?
If they didn't say it, they were afraid of going back.
Okay.
And a lot of the patients, when they were forced to downsize to 900, were fine. They got jobs.
Yeah.
They could live independently. They were able to buy a house.
So when they downsize, they just let the excess patients out.
Unless you couldn't function on your own.
Yeah.
Like you got a lobotomy and now you can't function on your own.
So, okay.
That basically brings us to the end of it. The buildings were torn down. Byberry is a neighborhood of Pennsylvania now. The buildings were torn down, I think, in 2007.
See, this is something that worries me about, like, it's a good thing about the internet and a bad thing about AI. The internet, for all the negatives, and there are a lot of negatives now, especially with like algorithmic content that is meant to trap you in a cycle and in an echo chamber of it learns where you are and it wants you to stay there because it knows how to reach you, how to advertise to you, how to keep you on their platform, keep you engaged, whatever. But in an internet age, I feel like something like this couldn't exist because it would be so easy for information to get out. I mean, stuff leaks all the time from government and big companies and all this stuff. I mean, there's police wearing body cams and things like that now. Like, it'd be so much harder to do that. But the thing that I worry about on the other side of that is now with AI, like I saw an image a week or 2 ago of supposedly Iranian soldiers next to a B-2 that they had shot down, but the size was wrong. Like, it was clearly AI because a B-2 is a giant plane. Like, there are images that you can find online of a B-2 where there's like a person standing next to one of the wheels.
Yeah.
Like by the landing gear. And this, it was more like a car.
Yeah.
The size of it. It was all wrong, but I'm fairly confident that I've seen AI images that I just assumed were real scrolling around. So it's like I just the biggest problem that I have with it is the uncertainty that's introduced and this like deniability that people and companies and institutions might have now to say, that's not real, that's AI.
Yeah.
That's just AI generated whatever.
Information got out, but it was primarily the government that was like, oh no, that's just exaggeration.
Right. Well, it was so much more controlled. I mean, there's this concept that I've been seeing a lot more of lately, the monoculture. We have no monoculture anymore. There's no, there's no MASH. There's no Friends. There's no single show. There's no common point for context that everybody knows. There's not a single thing that everybody can talk about. There's not some central source for how our morality is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Am I talking
It does,
sense?
yeah.
But the thing is, when we had that, when we were all consuming the same media pretty reliably, it was a lot harder to get information out because it was controlled by such few sources. And now with the internet, it's more decentralized, but a lot of these companies are kind of gobbling each other up, and it's getting back to kind of the way it was. Like, you can post all kinds of things that nobody's ever going to see. And now it's possible that people would just, that's probably AI. That didn't really happen.
Yeah, I am going to bounce around a little bit because there's some things I wanted to hit on that I didn't. And I typically do this in conversation, so this is not at all strange for me. But if this is confusing to you, I apologize. So one thing I did not speak on was there was children here for about 20 years.
There were children in the facility?
There were children. There was a children schoolhouse.
Children that were committed or children born from the inmates?
Committed.
They committed children?
They committed children. And one of the things I wanted to read was the new facility included a school that offered graded instruction, which was in one of the pictures. 4 teachers instructed 1/3 of the children on how to better care for themselves so they would be less of a social problem.
I mean, to be fair, that's kind of what school is up to a point.
That's a fucked up thing to say to kids.
Yeah. I mean, the teachers in a normal school aren't usually that clear about it. Like,
no,
we're just trying to teach you to be
not a problem.
Yeah, less of an issue in society. We're trying to we're taming you.
So the other thing is, what I wanted to hit on would be the conditions that you would be institutionalized under. So manic depressive psychosis, paranoia, involution, melancholia. I have no idea what that means. Severe depressive. You're severely depressed.
Okay.
General paralysis. So if you got shot in the back and now you're paralyzed for your legs, you're in here.
Oh.
Senile psychosis. You're old.
Yeah.
You're your mom. Alcoholic psychosis. Why is everything psychosis?
Yeah.
I don't know. You're an alcoholic that produced acute hallucinations. It didn't matter if it produced acute hallucinations. If you were an alcoholic, you were in an asylum.
Does alcoholism produce hallucinations?
Yeah, because you're drugging your brain.
Yeah, but
yeah,
I've never had a drink and like seen stuff.
Yeah, Kaylee has.
What?
Kaylee has. When I was on my bridal shower.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kaylee saw shit that was not there because she was drunk.
Okay, never heard of that.
Dementia paracox, which is schizophrenia. Epileptic psychosis. Psychosis with psychopathic personality. Psychosis with mental deficiency. Psychosis with cerebral syphilis. And Mongolian idiots. You know what that would be?
Down syndrome?
Yes. I didn't know that was a term.
I was mongoloid. That's the word I was thinking of.
I didn't learn that in medical assisting school, but yeah. So that's my history of Byberry.
So it was just always like that.
From the start.
I mean, they had good intentions, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah. I had good intentions. In the beginning, it was underfunding from the city and overcrowding and understaffing. And then after the city relinquished control, it was underfunding from the state.
But how do you fix
understanding?
That? I mean,
it was like several asylums were actually reformed and are still in operation as mental hospitals. It takes the state to fund it.
Yeah.
To be able to, because you have to get good workers. In order to get good workers, you have to pay them well.
Well, and they have to be in conditions that are conducive to actually helping people.
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine you could put the most rational, normal, everyday person in a place like that, and they would look nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and there's an episode of like Stuff You Should Know that I listened to years ago where they talked about, I think it was like a team of psychologists or psychiatrists who were trying to investigate one of these places, and they all, like, it was an experiment. They committed themselves to see if they would eventually realize that they don't have whatever disorder.
And they don't.
Like, they just came in with like vague symptoms, like I think it would be safer if I was here or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked at the notes, and they, like, they were taking notes on everything that was going on. They eventually stopped hiding that they were even just sort of investigating the facility, and the notes from the staff were just like, they exhibit note-taking behaviors and things like that. Mm-hmm. They just assumed everything was part of a psychosis. So they weren't really, the conclusion of it was they just realized they're not really looking for anybody to get better. They just attribute anything they're doing to some new psychosis.
Yeah. And they would have students.
They're pretending they're under a delusion that they're cured or something like that.
Yeah. They would have student nurses to learn about psychiatric illnesses That's not the best place to learn about psychiatric illnesses,
No, probably not.
but they would. And they lived worse than a dorm room.
Yeah.
But did I teach you anything you did not know?
You taught me a lot of things I didn't want to know. I mean, I knew that these were horrific, but the last conversation we had was about how the treatment started off with good intentions and often demonstrated some kind of benefit at the start, and eventually did, for some of these facilities, just become a tool of
torture,
fear, and coercion.
Yeah, tool of torture. The thing that's forever going to stick with me is the fact that there was somebody who's supposed to help them right on site and they didn't.
Yeah. Well, maybe they tried. I mean,
Doubt it.
It always comes down to incentives and consequences. And if there's no consequences, what's their incentive to do any better?
Yeah.
Like from a state, if you're some kind of state legislator and you're voting on something, it's like, well, okay, Byberry needs more money. Why? What have we heard about them? They're fine. They say they're fine. Then fine.
Yeah.
Let's not worry about it. They're the overflow place. That's their job. They handle these people who they can't handle anywhere else, or they can't help anywhere else. We have 100 other things on the docket that we need to worry about. I don't know how you hold people accountable for anything.
There was in the research, and nobody from Byberry that I know of was actually prosecuted, but there was people from other insane asylums who were prosecuted for
abuse
crimes.
Yeah.
And were sent to prison for years because of it. And a lot of them were like, well, I'm just your scapegoat. It's like, somebody has to be.
Or making an example of them or something like that. I mean,
so somebody has to be, so this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I saw something on Reddit that was saying if a bartender can be held criminally liable or whatever, prosecuted at all for over serving somebody, and then that person goes out and hurts somebody, like a judge who lets somebody go, refuses to prosecute, whatever, lets them out, they do something again. Should there not be some kind of repercussions for that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, lawmakers who fail to provide funding or fail to do anything they're supposed to do.
There's this more recent one that's kind of on the same line again, including police, of this TikToker who abused his girlfriend, and the girlfriend had marks on her. And they didn't arrest him or do anything with it. And basically told her, well, you need to get a restraining order. And told him, y'all need to stay away from each other, and left. The next day, he killed her. Now, I'm assuming they're good people and that they truly feel bad for that. But is it the system that made them scared of arresting him? And the fact that he's so out there with media and stuff that they're scared that they're going to be like judged for arresting him. And like, because with the media, there's crazy people who will find your address and your family and everything and threaten you.
Right. They'll dox you online.
Yeah. So are they scared that they didn't do it? Or is it the fact that they just didn't feel like doing it that time?
Yeah. Or they've seen situations like this 100 times before, and having the police there makes it real enough that they
stop.
Yeah.
Most of the time they don't.
Oh, we're bad for each other. We shouldn't.
Yeah. But it's that whole thing. Who should they get any sort of punishment for it? Or is it by the fact that they have to go through so many fucking channels
right
in order to do anything?
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was actually thinking, was if the superintendent was more empowered to do something, to hire more people, to spend more money, to do whatever it is they needed to do to increase the staff, the standard of living, just get clothes, fix windows.
Yeah.
I mean, there are processes in place to make sure that things don't escalate, but then it's just,
when the governor in 1980 came to tour the facility, they cleaned thoroughly the buildings that they thought he was going to investigate. And he still found problems in that. But he's like, no. I hear a lot of issues about the S buildings. We're going there. And that was...
And did anything come of that?
Yeah, the buildings were shut down.
Oh, are those the two that were shut down? Or the
one
or two that were shut down and they had to move people to another one?
There's a map of in that book of all the buildings that were vacant from him touring the facility.
Right.
And about 90% of them are.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of them are marked vacant, but no plan or funding to move them someplace else or do anything different.
Nope.
Mm.
Nope. Again, great book. It doesn't have a lot of the horrific stuff that I talked about in there. There's a lot of pictures with little like writings underneath of what you're seeing and all the history behind it. They go into a lot of the good stuff that happened in Byberry, not necessarily about all the bad stuff.
Oh, what's the good stuff?
The people coming, they had their own sports teams
For a while.
up
Or
until
were
they closed.
Oh,
They had their own sports team, so if you were good, you wanted to play the sport, you could play the sport. Patients were able, if you were good for 2 months, you were able to go outside twice a week. So go out into the city, and you would get $2 to spend. And you would do that for 6 months. At the end of 6 months, you were good. You got a bus pass, and you were able to go get a job out in the real world.
But you had to come back.
Like
you lived there.
Yeah.
Did they have a lot of people who just didn't come back?
No, because they would call the police department
And they would come find
of the city,
worked.
Tell them that they're violent and awful, and a lot of times they'd mace you until you complied. But there is one where I'm surprised the patient didn't get shot. They called the police department because this patient from the violent ward got out, had a knife with him, told the police department that he had a knife with him. He tried to stab a gas station worker with a pencil and then started going after the police with a knife. How he didn't get shot, I don't know.
Yeah.
Locked himself in a car, had the window down because the car wasn't on because he couldn't turn the car on because there's no key. And he was sat in there for, I think, an hour, and they finally maced him and opened the door. Took him back to the insane asylum. Yeah, they'd get the police to get you and bring you back. And then no more outside privileges for you. At least you get away from the smell and the horrors for a little bit.
Yeah. Maybe he was trying to go to prison.
Prison's a better place than an insane asylum. Yeah.
Well, that was thoroughly depressing.
It's quite. As much as I find true crime interesting, and I find all this interesting, because my whole thing is, why are you acting like that?
Yeah.
Why? And I got most of my answers researching this, and I hope most of you guys do too. But this was thoroughly depressing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. I mean, how do you go from what it started as with like shops and salons and all this stuff? I mean, I know overcrowding and lack of funding was part of it, but how do you get to the point where it's like a patient bites somebody so they yank out all their teeth? Was it just escalation? Is that just the end point of like trying different things? And
yeah.
Like nothing.
You try being nice, and after so many times, you're done with it. After so many people bite you, bite other patients, you don't want it to happen anymore because human mouths are disgusting, and you immediately get an infection. And if there's no doctors to treat the infection, you're gonna get sepsis and die.
So what were the things that the doctors were dealing with?
So typically the doctors would, not psychiatrists. Psychiatrists typically cannot prescribe medications that a PCP would, or a primary care doctor would. So you would have a primary care who either had his own practice or was going between Byberry and the prison. And certain amount of days were at Byberry, certain amount of days were at the prison, and then he'd have a day off during the week.
So they're just dealing with the most urgent stuff.
Yes.
Broken bones and surgeries.
And they basically would just see whatever the attendants would bring to them. And there are people who truly tried. There's this story of this patient who had a broken hip. I can't remember if it was at Byberry or not. And he had a broken hip for 3 weeks. And they kept picking him up and putting him in the wheelchair, even though for 3 weeks they've been trying to get the doctor to come look at him. And he couldn't or wouldn't. And they've been making it worse unknowingly until the doctor finally came out, took a look at the patient, and was like, yeah, he has a broken hip. It's like, great. If you would have came here sooner, we wouldn't have this issue.
Right.
So the doctors were overworked too. And you would have doctors who retired from their private practice who truly, truly wanted to help. And they would be seeing these patients up until the doctor's death.
So in the history that we were looking at before, a lot of these were run by like a religious order.
Almshouses were, yes.
Right. But I mean, they were essentially performing a similar function.
Uh-huh.
They just didn't have the language for it.
Correct.
Was there rampant abuse like this there, or were the religious orders better? Like, if you had brought in, assuming there's like an archdiocese for that area,
Mm-hmm.
if you're like, can you guys take care of this or help?
You would have volunteers, people who would volunteer for it, so you had more staff.
So there were people who could try to help make things better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking like a religious order would probably like self-sacrifice is supposed to be their whole jam.
Yeah. And I'm not at all talking about private institutions, which were typically religious ones, because they were great. They were the 5-star hotel of insane asylums. They were super fucking expensive too.
Yeah.
This state-run ones are for the poor, basically. If you were insane and not from a rich family, state-run insane asylum.
Yeah.
It still just astounds me that the state let it get so bad. It wasn't until 1980 when they're like, yeah, we definitely have to come see these buildings, and we're seeing the ones that we want to see, not the ones that you want us to see.
Mm-hmm. So what about the women? We didn't talk that much about the women. Like there was a women's ward, and they would prioritize them for like making sure they had clothes and stuff at least. But I mean,
they got the same treatment.
Yeah, it just was a little less extreme because they were maybe less likely to be violent.
It was less extreme because they were clothed.
Yeah, they were treated a little bit more like humans, so they acted a little bit more like humans.
Yeah, yeah, and generally,
because that's the one that bothered. I mean, all of it bothers me a lot, but what is scariest to me is the idea that your spouse or somebody in your family can just commit you.
Yeah. And they'd be abused too. They would go through the same procedures and everything. It's just they had clothes.
Yeah. But they were also like the only thing to get them in was just a male in their life saying they need to go in there for whatever reason.
Yeah, she's acting weird. She's not doing her home chores. The other thing that like baffles me is there was children there.
Yeah.
And they had children until about 1940 something when Pennhurst was created, and you know from all the ghost shows that was not a good place to be. So they go from one awful place where they're probably being treated decently to an awful place where they definitely were not.
But we're better now, right?
Yeah.
Are we?
Yeah, we have so many regulations in place that
at least
this should not happen again.
But the silver lining for this for me is it didn't happen everywhere. It was that specific facility, like that's the one that's super noteworthy for this. Some of the other ones were okay. The ones that were private
were okay.
They were trying their best, but I don't know. It needs to be in some way the responsibility of society to make sure this stuff doesn't happen. But if you guys enjoyed it, subscribe, rate, whatever on your particular podcast platform of choice.
Available everywhere.
Yeah, pretty much. And we'll be back for... You have something planned for the next one?
I do have another asylum plan it's the same thing happened, but it was a different experiment, which I'm going to go into. I did not see a whole lot on the medical experiments. When I looked up Byberry, it was all about the abuse because it was just so bad. But this one is a different experiment that happened. Basically, we went into what all asylums did if they were state ran.
Okay. Well, you're into that. You know where to find us. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.